The most important thing I can tell you about being a musical dramatist, which I guess is part of my deal, is that music is really evil. It can do all sorts of things without you even knowing it's doing it. And so that you can just be having a regular conversation, and that the music is going to completely change the DNA of the room. Everything you do turns out so that right now this conversation sounds really, really happy. But that all I have to do really, and I'm not changing the tone of my voice, and I'm not really changing the sound of anything I'm doing, but I've just made everything extremely ominous. I don't know why that works, but it does, and you all know that it does. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is. I had read an article about a middle-aged guy who was learning how to drive. And he said in the article, the funny thing is it turns out driving is not very difficult. It's just incredibly dangerous. And I thought, no, that's true. It doesn't take all that much to just step on the gas pedal and go. It's just that you could kill somebody. So that's sort of the way I feel about writing music for the theater, is it's not hard. Anybody can just hit a key on the piano, but it does things. And if you don't know what it does, it could ruin the entire party. Everything could go wrong. So what I wrote, it's actually music's simplicity that makes it so potent. It changes the molecular structure of a room completely, and the volume and density of the sound are almost irrelevant. You play a single note quietly on a piano in the middle of a scene, and the air becomes charged instantly, freighted with expectation. That first note, I like to think of as like a boulder at the top of a hill, and it just starts pitching forward. No matter what else is happening on stage, that boulder's journey is now part of the story. Almost immediately, our brains, and we don't know this is happening, but they start scanning the landscape to find the bottom of the hill. We have heard that something is happening, and we are trying to make sense of it. It's entirely unconscious, but I know it happens. Music is always going somewhere, and that's probably its key property, is that music is incapable of sort of sitting still. And even when we're not consciously processing it, our bodies are connected to it, searching out the rhythmic patterns and melodic contours. Where is it going to land, and is it going where I think it's going to go? Already, it's this very powerful force that you've introduced into the middle of your otherwise perfectly happy scene. But even the absence of music has its own power. The minute you make any choice about the music whatsoever, you've done something. A composer's job is to know where the boulder is going to land before he or she tips it down the mountain. If you're going to play that first note, you have to be aware of the consequences. Anybody can play a single note on the piano accidentally, but a composer makes the decision to play it and takes responsibility for everything that comes afterwards. It's not difficult, but it's incredibly dangerous. And I think songwriters have a particular burden in this regard because an audience's understanding of the word song involves a specific structure and a certain kind of resolution. A song, in your mind, in the contemporary audience's mind, is A, repetitive, and B, contained. And without the comforts of that repetition and containment, an audience gets very unsettled. They lose sight of the boulder. You know, they know it's still kind of rolling around someplace, and they get anxious because they can't get their bearings. An audience that's left in that state for too long gives up. They get bored, they stop paying attention. That boulder's journey is a story in and of itself. And those two things, repetition and containment, work together to guide an audience through the story. So the minute I start music, I have to make a decision about structure. I have to make some decision about how often it's going to repeat and how long it's going to be. Containment, meaning literally this. Now I'll talk about that. By containment, I'm saying that a song is about one thing. A song in a musical almost always has to accomplish a lot of things at once. But in order for it to be effective, all of those things have to be contained in one idea. So before you start writing, you have to answer the question, what is this song about? And I think this is important for the actor to pay attention to as well, not just what is the character doing, but also what is the writer trying to do? Because there are two things going on in any given piece of musical dramaturgy. There is what the character is saying, and there's also what the writer is trying to accomplish. And because the actor has to carry that music along, they should know what is going on and why certain decisions were made. Dramatically, the song is about a character or a group of characters expressing a need, a desire, an understanding. But a song is not just about the words. What story is the music going to tell? What is the music about? All right, if we're writing a musical together, and you say to me, write a song about how Timmy wants a dog, I'm already hearing music. I can go to the piano, I can go to the guitar at that moment, and I can start playing because I know enough about Timmy and the world he lives in to have an instinct about what his emotional life sounds like. Everybody go think in your head, what does the song about Timmy wanting a dog sound like? You've already made certain decisions. So I know, let's say, it's 1955, we're in a small town in the Midwest, Timmy's 11 years old, and the dog Timmy wants is ultimately going to save his life. I know all of that before I start writing because I know the show I'm writing, I know what the story is. So before I sit down, I know those things, and they immediately inform everything about the way the music's going to go. If you've got any kind of composer head, as I said those things, the music kept changing. As I said 1955, you went, oh, and then I said Midwest, and you went, right, right, and then you said the dog is going to save his life, and you think, oh, something's already happening to you musically. Change any of those pieces of information, and my musical instincts change. It's 1980. We're in Paris. Timmy is 40 years old. He wants to use the dog for meat. It's a very different song. Every one of those variables changes my sense of how the song is supposed to sound. In making musical decisions, there are three primary considerations: tempo, texture, and language. When we describe a genre of music, we're generally describing the combination of all three of those things. A Strauss waltz, for example, is going to be in 3/4 time, at a deliberate but not plodding tempo, with an orchestral kind of a texture, in a primarily tonal but occasionally chromatic language. This is when things get a little bit music-y, but when I say tonal, it means that all of the white keys, for example, that's something that's very tonal. It's all just in one key. Chromatic is when I start introducing other things into it. So a Strauss waltz is going to have a couple of some harmonic alterations, little bits of chromaticism. Alter any of those elements, and it stops being a Strauss waltz, and it becomes something else. So in this case, texture is sort of malleable. You can play it on a piano or have a woodwind quintet do it, and it still sort of sounds like a Strauss waltz DNA, though by the time you sort of get to banjos and harmonicas, it probably is not. But tempo is not remotely malleable if you want it to be a Strauss waltz. It's got to be a Strauss waltz. And language, in other words, the little bits of chromaticism, is fully integral to the genre. If you take away all the chromatic harmonies and make the piece entirely modal, it will sound sort of amateurish. It'll sound like something that you wrote when you first started learning how to play the piano. So I'm going to choose another example. If I said I wanted to do an 80s new wave rock song, maybe that only means something to like 8 of us in the room. But all right. But that's going to be at a very fast, unswinging 4/4, and boom, 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 boom. It's going to have synthesized drums and keyboards. Electric guitars are going to be the texture for that. And the language is going to be very much modal. There won't be any chromaticism in a song like that. It will largely be very static harmonically. And so here, texture is essential. If you play the song with acoustic guitars and violins, it no longer is a new wave song. But language might be a little open to interpretation. You might be able to get away with a little bit of modality, a little bit of chromaticism in there. You can get away with something like that. So just think about that. Already, those are two things where we talk about the Strauss waltz, the new wave song. And you can define it anyway. You can say it with grunge, you could say it with R&B, you could say it with even, you can get pretty micro about this, and you can say like something on Disney radio. There is a very specific tempo, texture, and language that belongs to all of those genres, and that's what genre sort of means. So when I'm making a decision about the musical story I'm going to tell, my first port of call is to pick the tempo, the texture, and the language. So if I'm talking about Timmy and the dog, forgive me, the dramatic story is going to guide those choices. It's part of the composer's job to tell the audience that it's 1955, it's the Midwest, and that Timmy is 11. You can go to the piano and start playing a Strauss waltz, but then you derailed the entire story. To return to my poor tortured metaphor, you sent the boulder off in an entirely different direction than the rest of the show, and your audience is going to be confused. Here we were in 1955, and all of a sudden it sounds like, you know, we're in a Viennese court. Now, you may want the audience to be confused because that's part of your master plan for how you tell this particular story. Spring Awakening, for example, deliberately confuses you. That's its point. But the point is that while these musical choices may be instinctive, they cannot be arbitrary. In the theater, the composer's job is to make decisions that will effectively tell the story. Anybody who says to you, oh, I just wanted to change it up, either is lying to you or doesn't know what they're doing. I want to also talk about, I told you there were two things. There's containment and then there's repetition. So repetition is a more technical idea than a creative idea, and this is fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, anytime you can give me something technical to deal with rather than something creative, great, with fewer decisions that I have to make. The structure of a song is a map that tells me how long it takes to get the boulder down the hill. Here's the boulder, there's the bottom of the hill. That's my song. I know that. That's what it's going to look like. So that journey can be measured in structural blocks rather than time, but a rough inference of time can be made just by drawing the map. I've got a basic idea that from here to here, because it's a song, is going to take somewhere between 2 and 7 minutes. It's a song. If I've got a whole long journey to take, it'll be longer. If I've only got a little bit of way for the boulder to go, it'll be shorter. By the time I start writing, I know I've got somewhere between 3 and 7 minutes to get my point across. The simpler the point, the shorter the trip. So contemporary song form, the stuff you guys all know pretty well, follows generally a verse-chorus structure. So when you're down and troubled, and you know, okay, that's the verse, right? Then there's the chorus, you just call out my name, and you know wherever they go, great. And then there's the bridge, hey, ain't it good to know that you've got a friend, right? So there's the verse, there's the chorus, there's the bridge, and they follow each other in a specific order, which maximizes a repetition without getting monotonous. That order is generally, there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's a bridge, there's a chorus. Almost every song you know does that. Sometimes we mess around a little bit. If you consider the verse and the chorus as a unified element, as one thing, you could think of this as an AABA form. And that's generally how I think of my songs. They generally proceed in an AABA manner. Verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Now, there are a lot of occasions where I mess with that structure, introducing new elements or deleting sections, but I try to hang on to the essential concept here, which is sufficient repetition without monotony. I have to let a musical idea be heard enough times for the audience to grasp it and connect to it, but not let that idea be repeated so often that they get bored of it. Marcia Norman and I have a phrase that we use sometimes because we're so old and so famous and we're so good at what we do that there are times where we will just sort of what we call ski the powder. We will just sort of, we can go off and we can kind of wander away from what we know to be a workable structure, a workable form, just because we have a sense that we want to go somewhere else, and we're really good, we can do that. But what I often tell students is, don't try to ski the powder. Give yourself time to just trust that the technical elements of repetition really are going to work for you, and the better you understand them, the happier you're going to be. The complicating factor of all of this in the theater is that characters, as a rule, can't sit in one place emotionally while they're singing. Music is so dynamic, it's always moving, that it pushes characters out of one state of mind and into another. Theatrical music, by mere dint of its presence, is very active. And so pop songwriters and playwrights can get sandbagged by musical theater, specifically because of this issue. And I think you've probably all seen examples of this. The pop writer likes to go for the repetition. They go for the hook. And they are not used to accommodating a character's emotional transformation. They want to just stay in one place. That's what a song does. A playwright gets really frustrated by the need to keep repeating a musical gesture, even after the character has already verbally expressed the dramatic thrust of the moment. Why do we need to keep saying it? We already said it. So how do we balance our character's need to move forward with our musical need to repeat ideas and generate structure? Well, this is what I call the great musical theater balancing act. And there are a number of tricks that composers use to negotiate this issue. You've all heard the grand modulation before the final chorus, which is, you know, a total cliche, but really works. But a composer and a lyricist have to work very closely together to ensure that the story keeps going all the way through the song. Unquestionably, part of why audiences respond to songs is that the repetition is intoxicating. It's hypnotic. We are in a world and we don't want to step out of it. We've all been in that place where we're just sort of in a groove and we're like, yes, I want to just stay in that groove. But the drama cannot stop just because the music starts. All of the stories have to get told at the same time. On some level, that might make composing less fun. But that's why you chose to write for the musical theater. You're trying to get the story told. A perfect theatrical song is not the same as a perfect pop song, nor is it the same as a perfect operatic aria. The kind of storytelling that happens in a musical is specific to the form, where the journeys of the characters on stage determine the pace and tone of the storytelling. The composer of a musical, therefore, has to constantly negotiate between the sheer musical pleasures that the audience and the composer desires and the basic storytelling that the audience is following. Containment and repetition, they are the guideposts that help a composer thread that needle. So one of the wonderful things about music is that it can lead us unknowingly to extraordinary places. Parts of our hearts that we can only access when the song is playing. That's also the trap. Within the confines of a musical play, the characters can't run in a different direction just because the music wants to go there. The composer has to control the boulder's trajectory, or the characters get lost and the audience gets bewildered. So like I said, surprisingly difficult, but incredibly gratifying. I have a pretty simple formula for how I can get actors through a song. And understanding how that structure works is a very useful ladder for an actor. I used to teach a class at USC for actors, and we always talked about that someone has a set of keys and you need the keys. A ring of keys, perhaps. And so, if you know that the song is an A-A-B-A song, the key is about how you check in at the end of each of those structural points. You as an actor trying to figure out if you got the thing you wanted or not. And a good writer is going to write knowing that. A bad writer is not going to write knowing that, and you still have to figure it out. You as an actor are still stuck with the same problem, which is that you have to know what you want at any given moment, and you have to not be getting it, or else the song would be over. The minute you get the thing you want, there's no reason to keep singing. So a good writer manages to keep the song going until you get the thing that you want. And maybe the last chorus is your delightful celebration of the thing that you got what you wanted. But by and large, a song is about a quest to get something, not about having gotten it or about moaning that you aren't getting it. It's trying to get a thing. So think about your AA, your BA. What I always like to say is, the song is called, Give Me the Keys. I said, give me the keys. Oh my God, I thought you loved me. If you really loved me, you would give me the keys. A-A-B-A. And so what's important is that you're going to first ask for the keys, and at the end of that first chorus, you're going to hear the word no. So you're going to ask again. Musically, you are likely asking exactly the same way. The lyrics are going to be different, but the music is almost certain to be, at least in terms of shape and melodic form, identical. You have a job as an actor to make that music count for something different. Give me the keys, give me the keys. I didn't say them both the same way. I said them a little bit differently. Same words, but I put a little different emphasis on them. Music can do that too. There can be short phrases and long phrases. There can be notes that you accent. There can be dynamics. There can be all sorts of things that you do that make music. But you must give yourself permission to make music. You must give yourself permission to interpret musically what is in front of you. It's not just about the words. Give me the keys, give me the keys. And then there is something in that B section that is going to change the terms of the debate. Everything that is important in the song happens at the end of that B section. That is what I always like to say. It's probably not true, but let's assume it is. Everything that's important about the song happens right in that hinge between the B section and the last A, because that's where we find out whether you're going to get the thing you want or not. Songs, in a lot of songs, you get to make the decision about whether you get it or not. Especially if you're doing audition kind of things, or when you're just working in classes, you get to make certain decisions about how the end of that song is going to work. But the most important thing is that you hit the end of that B section, and there is a hinge. There's something that flips you over and says, finally, so please, give me the keys. Just ponder it. If you think about I Can Do Better Than That, one of the songs I wrote for the last 5 years. It's a very, very long song by the standards of all of this. What you never are aware of until fairly late in the game, and it's by design, is what it is she's asking for. She starts the song by talking about her friend Carol Ann, who lived in a tiny little house in Jersey during high school and got knocked up and ended up marrying her boyfriend who played in a rock band and worked in a record store at the mall. And I had to get out of Jersey. I can do better than that, she says. And that's the end of the first A. There is something that is important that happens at the end of that first A where she has to check in and find out if she got what she wanted. Now you as an actor are going to say, what am I supposed to be looking for? I don't know what I want yet. That's because you haven't done your homework, because you're going to see where it comes in. The second A of the song, when she hasn't gotten the thing she wants. The second A of the song, she talks about moving to the city. She meets some sleazy actor guy who's a nut job, and they shack up, and it's a catastrophe, and he leaves because his career is important, and I can do better than that, she says. And she checks in again. Did I get the thing that I wanted? I didn't. Everything that's important happens right now. She says, you don't have to get a haircut, you don't have to change your shoes, you don't have to like Duran Duran, just love me. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting close. You don't have to put the seat down, you don't have to watch the news, you don't have to eat prosciutto, you don't have to, whatever it is. You don't have to do a thing, just stay with me. I'm still not there because I'm not, you notice that the hinge hasn't happened yet. But stay with me is the first really concrete clue to what's going on. I want you and nothing but you, miles and piles of you, blah, blah, and totally mine. Here's the hinge. I'm gonna actually put off what I have to say for like another 4 lines, but the hinge is right there, and if the actor's on it, she knows what's going on by the time we've gotten to here, and the audience should sort of get it by now too. I don't want any lifetime commitment. I don't need to get hitched tonight. I don't want you to throw off all your walls and defenses. I don't want to scare you, but I know when a thing is right. And I spend every day reconfiguring my senses. When we get to my house, take a look at that town. Take a look at how far I've gone. I will never go back. Never look back anymore. And it seems like my life led right to your side and will keep me there from now on. Look, it's about to happen. Think about what you wanted. Think about what could be. Think about how I love you. Say you'll move in with me. That's what the whole song has been leading up to. What she has been asking for the entire time, and because she's an actress, she's incapable of actually just fucking asking for it. But what she's been asking for the entire time is, say that we're going to move in together. That's what I want to do. She hates that she has to be the person who's asking. She wanted him to ask first, but fine, it's going to take her 5 minutes to get there. But from the very beginning of the song, that is the thing she wanted. And then she says, think of what's great about me and you, think of the bullshit we've both been through, think of what's past, because we can do better than that. It took me the entire song to get her to say the thing that she wanted. But it's there, and if you understood how the structure of the song was built, it helps you as an actor navigate what seems like, at first, an almost impossibly long pile of verbiage. But it's not. It's all built very specifically so that that boulder starts at the top of the hill and is meant to land here. I'm really good at it. I really knew how long I wanted that thing to go, and it was important for her because she's incapable of just saying the thing that she wants. It is important that that boulder is going to take a long time to get there. There's a secondary thing that happens over the course of the song that you don't really know unless you're watching it staged. And it might not be staged well, so you might not get this. But the whole course of the song is that she has to be finished before they pull into the driveway. If they pull into the driveway in New Jersey of her parents' house, she lost. She lost the chance. Before she gets out of the car, she wants to be able to say to her folks, I'm going to move in with Jamie, everything's going to be great. She's got, from the time she turns the ignition on in Manhattan, as they're driving down the Jersey Turnpike, she's got that amount of time to get this thing done. And I think you as actors all know what that is. You've all personally been in that situation where you know you've only got a certain amount of time and you don't want to actually say it, but all right, I got to get it done by the time by the time the car runs out of gas, I better have sealed the deal. And so that's what she's doing. The more you understand how structure helps you as an actor, the more secure you can be in making musical choices along the way. The more you understand that the A functions this way and the second A is here, that means that the second A gets to have a different color. What kind of different color does it have? That depends on what you're asking for. It depends on how you're asking for it. It depends on what's going on. It depends on if you want to use the dog for meat. It all sort of depends on choices that you as an actor get to make, but they are choices that you have to make. Even for the composers, you have to realize that what you're doing is you are generating for a character a story that goes from one end to another. They're not big stories. They're, little journeys about things that are very important. If they weren't that important, you probably wouldn't sing them.